I okay. So for a story for the Baltimore Sun, I took a cruise of a sort on a very unusual cruise ship. Is anyone listening in, one of those people that my wife and I often talk to who say they never, ever will take a cruise in their lives? Are you one of those folks? Yeah, maybe. I'm hearing nods. But yeah, so I think there's a misconception that cruises are all about Kathy Lee Gifford doing jumping jacks on the deck, and it's some Caribbean jewelry buying expedition or something like that. We'll talk more about this, but if you're into adventure, if you're into seeing some places that are hard to get to for that adventure, sometimes it's a ship, an unusual adventure cruise ship, an expedition ship that can get you where you want to go. Okay, so this you're taking a look here at pretty innovative type of cruise ship. It is a converted former Soviet icebreaker. This is a one-time a real working Soviet icebreaker called the Kapitan Khlebnikov, if I'm pronouncing that right. And you'll see here, Quark Expeditions, based in Connecticut, I think, had a really a good idea to, instead of building or combining with other companies to build multi-million-dollar cruise ships, their idea is to charter former working icebreakers and outfit them for passengers, so passengers can go to exotic locales that have a lot of ice. So good idea. Looking at this ship, anyone have a guess as to where we passengers probably had our cabins? There are no right or wrong answers. No right or wrong answers in Mandel's stream talk. Probably
whenever you have a window, no?
Sorry?
Whenever you have a window.
I'm sorry, I just couldn't hear that. I think there might be a.
He said wherever you have a window.
Yes, exactly. Right on. Good point. So I was just going to say, not down here, probably, right? At the hull, but well said, where the windows are. This, being a New Yorker, this to me looks a little bit like Rikers Island prison. I don't know if you're familiar with that, driving by on, coming in on 95, but anyway, so it looks a bit grim, but in fact, each cabin was quite shipshape, with teak and very pleasant. Was there a swimming pool aboard? Any guesses?
No.
Well, it's the Arctic, folks, but so I thought, there isn't going to be any kind of, venue for swimming. I like to swim on ships. Turns out the sailors and the occasional passenger like me had what looked like, I don't know if you've been to seafood restaurants where lobsters, swim around in the tank, right? There was a sort of a lobster tank for humans down here below below deck. Yes, I'm not making that up. I should add, we'll see more of these white things. What are they? Those are distant iceberg, remains of icebergs. So
bergy bits.
These, sorry?
They're bergy bits.
Yes, bergy bits. I like it. Could be a dog biscuit brand or something. So we passengers very lucky on this trip. These are a bunch of passengers. I don't remember who they are exactly, but so we would line up twice a day on adventure cruises and adventure expeditions. You don't just sail and look at places from the ship that you're on, but one of the great things is that there are landings ashore using Zodiac boats, which are inflatable rubber boats with motors. Or in this case, since this was, I hate to even bring the Russians into this, by the way, because of their horrifying behavior right now in Ukraine. But I'm just, telling you of a past time when we were aboard the ship that had nothing to do with the current Russian government. Anyway, twice a day, we pastors got to be helicoptered around, in addition to our, shore landings aboard an Aeroflot helicopter. Is anyone ever flown on Russia's national airline, Aeroflot? Good. Yeah, I'm seeing some no's. It's a nightmare in many ways, safety-wise. I haven't seen this for myself, but people still smoke on board. There are, instead of real overhead luggage bins, there are, those stretchy netting things that some bus companies use for baggage. Yep, they got them on Aeroflot. Anyway.
How much it costs you there?
Sorry?
How much it costs you?
To do this adventure cruise? So it wouldn't be, I'd have to look that up. Thanks for the good question. It'd be better if you would Google Quark Expeditions, High Arctic and Greenland, okay, cruise, to find out the current price, okay? So here we are, we're lining up for our daily helicopter ride to look at walruses and, icebergs and stuff like that. Question for you. All of we passengers were issued these yellow, very insulated parkas when we signed on for the cruise for free. We all know, I think, that expedition companies and cruise lines are in business like any other company, and they're trying to make ends meet, make a profit. Why would Quark Expeditions issue every passenger a free, probably $500 or more parka?
Well, I would think for safety reasons.
Very good.
They're
Exactly right.
they're using the color yellow because in the Antarctic and Arctic there's not another yellow to compete with. They're being seen in case they're in trouble.
Okay, great answers, great points, very true, and appreciate that. So yes, that's a huge reason. Safety. Do we adventure travelers always pack, and do we always dress appropriately? Do we?
No.
We do not. And as a proud aside, we New Englanders, I'm from New York, but I'm an adopted New Englander. I love it here. Guess what? We have a rep. We've got a reputation for wearing fleece and corduroy and flannel instead of, let's say, I've traveled with a lot of people from Seattle, San Francisco, Texas, where they've got the latest high-tech gear that we soldier on with our natural fibers. So safety's big. Advertising's another possible little reason, right? I still proudly wear my Quark jacket because I kind of like it. And the yellow, not only is there not much yellow in the extreme north, but it's optically visible, right? Greenland. Anyone ever go there? I get a lot of people in this talk who have been to Iceland. Anyone travel to Iceland or have plans to?
I've been to Iceland.
Okay, cool. And it's become more and more popular. I've been there as well. Maybe you've heard this little phrase, or maybe you haven't. Iceland is green and Greenland is icy.
Right.
You ever hear that?
Yep.
So it sometimes confuses people who sign up for Icelandic, trips. It's an easy flight, there's a lot to see, but it's kind of like visiting, the Hebrides or something. I'm half Scottish, so I know a little bit about, cold parts of Scotland. And so Iceland, just FYI, is a bit more like a Scandinavian country or Scottish island. Whereas Greenland, if you read about it, and you probably have, it's an real Arctic destination, and it is suffering in a big way. I'm not here to lecture anyone, including myself, but its glaciers are melting big time. Even here, 10 years ago, we landed, this was, getting towards summer in the Arctic. You can still see, of course, what are these guys?
Icebergs.
These are our friends, our enemies, icebergs, what sank the Titanic. Even landing here, locals would told us, oh boy, we would normally have some snow patches everywhere at this time. So what you're looking at is simply, a bunch of us asked, well, you know what? We had a day in port here in this tiny town of Kanak, Greenland. We thought we'd have lunch. So we asked the locals for recommendation, the recommendation for the best restaurant in town. And that was the Polar Grill. So we hiked up a big hill, and they're, oh, wow, we're looking forward to our, squid burgers or whatever. Unfortunately, there's a sign on the door, which you probably can't read, on the window. What did it say? It said closed for the season. And I have to say, I tried asking around and asking, well, what is the season here? What is the season? So I have to add that in this town, it's a really unusual place. It had 30,000, I'm not making this up, 30,000 sled dogs in this town, and about 3,000 human residents, okay? So, I mean, that ratio, it may be a world record, right? Sled dog per human. And I mention this only because it's out of view, but when the ship blew its whistle for us to load up our little inflatable Zodiac boats and return to the icebreaker, when that whistle blew, literally every one of those 30,000 sled dogs let out a howl. And, in my traveling life, I don't think I've ever heard a more eerie, haunting sound than that. So any questions before this is not Greenland. Any questions about, our Arctic cruise?
Did you have a guide?
Bunch of different guides. When you're on an adventure cruise, ships usually bring aboard, not numerous, but there'll be 5 to 10 lecturers who will also take you when you go ashore and tell you about the destination. So yes, we did. Okay, this is another very cold Arctic place. It is an area in northern Manitoba, Canada. It's a town in particular where you can, for not that much money, and where I went to see polar bears and their cubs in the wild. Does this sound familiar to anyone?
Yes.
Sorry?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. I don't know if anyone's been. It's becoming more and more popular. It's a little town of Churchill, Manitoba. Okay.
Yes.
And it's a really interesting, safari. And when I wrote the piece, I actually referred to it as a polar bear safari. What happens is you fly to, Winnipeg and in Manitoba, and then take a very small plane way up north to this little tiny town of Churchill. and it's right on Hudson Bay, where bears, polar bears, if you've met any, if you know any, have any friends who are polar bears, they like best to go hunting on ice floes during the winter. So the ice is just about freezing in late October. The bears are gathering around to go for their hunt, and bears are excellent swimmers. And so this is the moment when you go, and if you wish, if you're interested, stay aboard a tundra train. Tundra train, what's that? It's much like a regular Amtrak long distance train. You're looking at the caboose of our tundra train, bunch of passengers pointing at bears. We were on board for a week. It has a dining car, a lounge car, a bunk car with wood stoves. It's got a shower car. So it's a rare opportunity to get up close and personal with wild polar bears.
Peter, we have a question. Is there
Sure.
any medical care available on either this tundra train or on the ships before?
On every ship, every cruise ship, no matter how exotic, there is either a doctor or there'll be somebody who's a highly trained, physician's assistant. Okay, so that shouldn't be a concern. Up here in Churchill, people fly places. It's like Alaska. Okay, if there's an emergency, you would be as close to a doctor as you would in the U.S., except you'd be flown there by small plane or helicopter. Okay, so, and this is true of a lot of places in the north. So good question. Anyway, so how come this thing is jacked up so high? This train looks like, why can't we be further down towards the tundra?
We stand 10 feet tall.
It's a good thing, isn't it? It's nice to stand tall, especially when who's roaming around.
Polar bears.
Polar bears are roaming around. Do they find humans tasty?
We hope not.
Yes, they certainly, most certainly do. I've asked this particular bear. Humans are extremely tasty. They're one of, as you may know, nature's most really dangerous predators for humans. This is not a dangerous predator. This is prey. This is a young me. I really, really wanted on this trip to find some kind of sign that said, hey, look, polar bears, beware, okay? But as you know, the way things go up in the far north in Churchill, they live day in and day out with bears, okay? And we'll talk about this in some other locales that we're gonna visit. So nobody puts up signs because it's a part of their normal ho-hum daily life, except for one part of town. The only place I could find this fun little, it's just a souvenir shot really for me, is polar bear alert, stop. The only place I could find that was at the town dump. How come?
Because they live there.
Yeah, well, polar bears do hang out at the dump. They do. None in this shot, but why do they hang out at the dump?
For the food.
Food.
There's easy food, exactly. Okay, and I love animals and deeply love traveling to places where I can see animals in their real universe. Okay, but their real universe now. Sounds like I'm preaching. Their real universe is in part the universe we've made and we've changed. So bears adapt like bears in Maine, or you guys from your various libraries in Mass. I'll bet there are bears in some of your towns, eating from your feeders. And so bears are getting an easy meal, no question. Occasionally, in the town of Churchill even, a polar bear misbehaves and attacks or threatens some humans. What happens? I asked, and they're not killed, which is great. They have count them, two large animal vets who have a huge supply of heavy duty tranquilizer darts. So what happens is the misbehaving bear is shot with a dart, tranquilized, and then, I'm not making this up, as Dave Barry used to say, they are helicoptered in a net about 20 miles outside of town. Any guesses as to what happens next?
They're released out there, I believe.
They are. What do you think the bears do?
They come back.
Exactly right. They come right back, right back to the dump. This is one of the, oh boy, after 3 or 4 days, you see more bears than, I mean, literally, than people got tired of the bears. There's so many. A couple of points asides, this bear had an interest in licking the tires of the tundra train. What would be tasty for a bear on a rubber tire? I asked that. I wasn't sure. Salt, road salt. Another thing a couple of the bears like to do, and this added extra feeling of, excitement for us passengers. You know how Amtrak trains have those plates between cars that you walk when you walk between cars. The plates are bumping up and down a little bit. In between cars of the tundra train, there were gratings. Okay, the bears would rear up and lick the gratings right inches below your shoes. So it was a fun thing to see.
Peter, we have 2 questions from the chat.
Sure, let me just do this one slide and I'll take them. This is how that story ended up for the Boston Globe, combining the polar bear expedition with the expedition to Antarctica that you're going to see later in the talk. So I'll take the questions just a sec. This is just one of those moments for travel writer that it's for us to do humble travel writing hacks. It matters a lot for our making a living and stuff, for our story to end up in a good place in the newspaper. In this case, it was the lead and the editor, who was a really cool guy at the time at the Boston Globe. It commissioned a fun illustration. So that was a good moment. Anyway, so there were some questions, it sounded like.
So one person asks, when does the ground freeze there?
Well,
Always frozen.
when does the tundra actually become frozen, right? Is that the question?
Right.
So, again, if I were really knowledgeable about the climate up there, I would be able to answer that. But since I'm not, the ground was already frozen down to a certain level in late October, okay, when I was there, which was just the way things are. So don't let that deter you, okay, if that's going to be a problem for you to go there, okay? Other questions?
Apparently the question was asked because she was wondering about when archaeology was possible.
Oh boy, okay, well, that's an interesting point. Again, it would be wrong of me to try to answer except to say summer. Clearly, that's when even those of us who live in northern New England know how hard the ground can get off season, right? So certainly now there are all kinds of digging equipment that can do it off season. But I would, if you're planning an archaeological expedition, boy, I would pick the Arctic summer.
Then we also had a question, what happens to the polar bears as the ice continues to melt?
Yeah, it's a big problem, okay? And you can look this up. They're really among the more endangered, well-known mammals, okay? this is, there's a lot of that going on, a lot of deeply endangered species, as we know, all over the world. Okay. These guys, many articles have been written about polar bears in particular because they're really on the front lines of global warming. Many of you, if not most of you, have read about how the Arctic is warming more quickly than much of the rest of, we're all warming, but the Arctic is leading the charge. And so because they've evolved to hunt on these ice chunks, ice flows. They're not able to do that. The Arctic Ocean is melting. So good question. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Great. Okay. On to the next. And it's going to be warmer, folks. I've got to try to get the black background back. Oh, why did it do that? Whatever. Can everyone see this? We're looking at a rainbow here. Everyone see this?
Yes.
Good. Is it distracting to have the white background here, or should I just carry on?
Just carry on. It's okay.
Carry on. I like it. Soldier on. So here we are. It's very warm. We're on an expedition cruise. It's certainly not the Arctic or Antarctica. This is one of the world's most famous rivers, if not the most famous. It's in Brazil. That's a hint.
Amazon.
It's the Amazon. Very good. And I am writing about, and you can easily sign up for a riverboat cruise on the Amazon and even more wild Rio Negro in Brazil. And what's good about that? What's interesting about that? Oh boy, a lot of stuff. And it's not that expensive. You fly to Sao Paulo, Brazil, and you take another flight to the jungle town of Manaus, where they have a really good business for the town, building beautiful locally made riverboats made out of incredibly beautiful local jungle woods, nicely crafted. There's air conditioning, good food. On the top deck, you stand out up there in the evening drinking. Anyone ever drink a caipirinha, Brazilian cocktail?
No.
I wish I were drinking one now.
Yes. Yes.
Somebody has had a caipirinha. It's amazing. It's rum, it's lime, it's sugar, it's soda water, and I think maybe some mint. I can't remember. But I drank too many, so I can't remember. Anyway, what you're looking at here, you spend a week or two, if you wish, sailing up and down the Amazon and the Rio Negro. And like I said, the Arctic cruise, you're constantly going ashore. See this little skiff here, motorized skiff? That's ferrying passengers to hike around in the jungle. So this, I will tell you, is a local craft. Any guesses as to what it's used for?
Church.
Sorry? Okay, good guess. Fishing's huge there. There's a clue on this boat.
The church?
It is. It's exactly right. Great guess. I took this talk. I sometimes take it to schools, and I went to a Catholic school. I thought they'd, be all over this. What I got was, oh, it's a radio broadcasting station, whatever. So good for you. It's a church, and like, let's say Venice, on the rivers and the big rivers in the jungle, life comes to you. Vendors come to you. The local priest comes to visit your town. Deliveries come to you by way of water. Okay, and here is a typical village along the banks of the Amazon. Beautiful colors. How come? Why do we think houses are jacked up like this?
Flooding.
Yes, exactly right. Good, great guesses. It's floods at least twice a year, sometimes more. And yeah, it helps a little. Snakes try to slither, don't they, into your house and succeed often. Bugs get into your house. But flooding's the main reason.
What are the roofs made of?
Tin usually, tin or aluminum sometimes. Okay, metal roofs are really common. Good, really good question.
Thank
In
you.
the tropics, they're cheap and they're solid. These local girls were selling these necklaces made from stuff they found. So I bought one for my wife, and I was on my way back home to the US, and I started looking at this thing and wondering, I don't know how well you can see it, but they're beads and stuff, but they're also this speckled thing that I was like, well, what the heck is it? Anyone have a guess? The speckly thing? I had no idea.
Look like skulls.
Probably
Snake.
some endangered animal.
Snail shell.
Oh, I like these guesses. These are good
bean?
guesses.
Is it
All-
a bean?
Sorry,
Is it a bean?
is it a bee?
Bean.
Beetle.
Oh, beetle. Great guess. Very good guess. All of these are really good guesses. What it turned out to be was a nut. There are one of the cool things in the Brazilian jungle is you're hiking around, you're seeing thousands of rubber trees, okay? And you can take your pocket knife and slice into the rubber. These are, was what rubber used to come from from trees before it's synthesized. And these trees bleed white rubber when you slice them. And each of these little things are rubber tree nuts, which I found kind of cool. Most fun of all on our
That's a good
Amazon
one.
adventure is, anyone remember out there, Mutual of
That's-
Omaha's Wild Kingdom?
That's a piranha.
Yes, that is exactly what this is. We got to go fishing. Piranha are everywhere, as you might guess. Look at the teeth from this guy. Our guide is showing. But we went fishing, and what we used for bait. What did we use for bait? We used steak, leftover steak from the previous night's dinner on the ship. Gotta love it. And one woman, I'm not kidding you, who'd never fished before, caught like 35 piranha. It was just, easy fishing, even though our equipment was crummy. And the chef was kind enough on board the ship to fry the piranha up. And when we got back from our fishing trip, do they look like they're meaty?
No.
Oh,
No. So it shocked me. I thought, again, going back to being, when I was like 11-year-old kid, my buddies and I, we were New York City kids, but we had two fears. One was, oh, whoa, you don't want to fall into quicksand, because if you do, the more you thrash around, the more you go down. Okay. God knows where we got that. The second one was, if you ever fall into a river or pond where there are piranha, they're going to strip you to the bone in seconds. I don't know if anyone else remembers this kind of, discussion, but so I just was always really nervous about these, and I thought, well, these guys must be much bigger than they actually are. They're quite bony. And do they look tasty? They're not tasty. So before we move on, any questions about piranha? or more to the point about the Amazon?
Well, do they, if a human or a animal fell in the river, would they start to eat them and never?
Yes.
Yes.
So usually That's the right question to ask, and we asked our guides the same thing, and we actually were a few of us and most of the crew were happily swimming with piranha around after we learned that if you thrash around vigorously, piranha will not attack you, but if you're stunned or drowning, piranha will indeed eat you. Okay, but it wasn't hard to scare them away, and it wasn't hard to, even normal swimming motions was enough for piranha to give you a wide berth. So it wasn't like what me and my buddies when we were 10 thought, where zero in on you and get you. Good question. Anything else?
We have a question from the chat about how long was your trip to the Amazon?
It was a week and 2 days, actually. And the 2 days were in Manaus, a pleasant jungle town. And so that's good enough, I think, enough time for you to get the feel, the parrot squadrons of parrots soaring overhead, snakes in the jungle, and life in a universe that we're not used to. Highly recommend it.
Where do you find out about these trips?
Say it again. How do you find out?
Yeah.
It's not, all of these are easily available by Googling. There are certain companies that specialize in adventurous expedition trips. One of those is International Expeditions. So if you Googled them, you'd see a whole bunch, okay? But if you do that, then you'll probably get suggestions from Google for their many competitors, okay? So there are a bunch of companies doing this particular trip or similar. And same is true of other adventure travel trips, okay? We're doing a sojourn. We're doing a side trip to a few Muslim countries. And I include this for a bunch of reasons. One is my wife and I, people have all sorts of fears about, people are afraid of visiting Islamic countries. There are certainly reasons why we've all worried and still worry about terrorism and stuff like that. But I include this because there's much wonder and beauty and great food and great culture in the Islamic world. And you may find yourself shocked to discover that there's nowhere in the world where the concept of welcoming the stranger is more strong than in Islam. So rather than people attacking you, you're more likely to have people inviting you over to their house for tea and for dinner. Okay. This is Jordan. This is on the outskirts of one of the world's really famous great sites, Petra. Jordan is, FYI, it's an ally of the United States, it has a peace treaty with Israel. So it's a very peaceful way to visit a Muslim country. And one of the really fine destinations there is this ancient city of Petra. To get there, you walk through, I've got to try, just hang with me for a second. I have to go and pull up this shot again. Okay. Oh, good. Okay. So to get into the ancient city of Petra, which is preserved because this is desert, and the centuries rolled by, and desert is a great preserver of architecture. It'll sculpt stone. As you can see, this whole canyon has been sculpted by wind, but it's much less likely to destroy buildings and human monuments. So part of the joy of going to this, walking for about an hour to get into the ancient city of Petra, is walking through what's called the Sikh this ancient cavern-like entryway. Has anyone been to Jordan or to Petra? Okay. So,
Yes.
oh, great. Okay. So correct me if you had different, or chime in if you've had different experiences. This is the moment as you're walking through this vast canyon when you suddenly come upon this glowing, it's like you feel like Indiana Jones as you come upon this lost city. This happens to be my wife, Kathy. This is one of those photographic moments. This ended up, I think, my wife has ended up in a bunch of newspapers. Sometimes makes her upset, and sometimes doesn't. But here we are at the moment when we're realizing, oh wow, we're there. And so I don't know where she got the pith helmet, but it's just a photographic moment where the glow of the destination is coming through in, I thought, a good way. This to me, people will sometimes ask, as somebody might yet do that this evening, what to you is the most all-around exotic destination of all? And, you know, I can often think about that, and there's no clear answer, but my wife and I both feel that Morocco has this sense of mystery and beauty and combined that you can find it elsewhere, but it's all there in Morocco. The architecture, the food, nice people, and a feeling of mystery. This is the outskirts of Marrakesh, a little mix of old and new. This is a local Berber. It's a ethnic minority there. Gotta love it. Remember payphones? Gee, I do. This is again Marrakesh. These are Morocco's Atlas Mountains, and in the distance, if you go to Morocco, or there are other countries that have this too, the sheer wonder of it, you feel like you're in the movie Casablanca, better in many ways, because the city of Casablanca is in Morocco, but it's a much more modern city. This is the city of Fez. I've never in my life, maybe you have, been in a more tightly wound, knotted curl and twist and a conglomeration of alleys and sub alleys and lanes. It's the easiest place to get lost. This is my wife and our friend Martha chatting away. Some of the incredible architecture there. This is another photographic, nothing spectacular about this site, just a moment of lighting for those of us who write about travel. We don't just write about it, but we work really hard on our photography, because when we sell an article, when we have an assignment for an article, we're also lucky when we sell some of our photos to the editor too, okay? And this is just a little alleyway in, I think it was Marrakesh, where the lighting works, the colors worked, and I got lucky. I think photography is a lot of luck sometimes. I got lucky with somebody's foot was going in here. So I'll ask for a question in just a second. We're still in the Islamic universe. I bet you can guess. This is just a tourist on top of a camel ride. Can we guess where we are?
Egypt.
Very good. I've searched some clues here. We're at the Great Pyramids, which are pretty fantastic to see. What a gift to be able to see them. Anyone ever take a camel ride?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
How was it? Comfortable, enjoyable?
No.
Bumpy.
Tell us, why not?
Well, first of all, you got to get on. So the
Well
camel has,
done, well said. What's the problem there?
the camel's taller than me. So even when they kneel down, it's still tall, and you gotta like hike yourself up and hope you
Yeah.
sit up.
Well
then
said.
When
Well
it gets
said.
up, it's like bumpity bumpity.
It is. It is. I should bring you with me when I do this talk. So, because that describes it better than I have. So what happens was, as our friend was pointing out, camels, this guy's the handler, right? Camels kneel down and put their neck and head down for you to get aboard. Okay, so their front legs are down flat. You get
Yeah.
on, and these guys love to laugh at this. They never tell you the fact that
Oh yeah.
that when the camel gets up, you're immediately, first you're thrown backwards, then you're thrown forwards dramatically over the head of the camel.
Yeah.
You end up becoming very close, intimate friends with the camel by hugging his neck for dear life.
Right.
It's quite an experience. For a Toronto Star story, I went down the Nile on a riverboat. Incredible experience. You stop in places like Luxor, the Valley of the Kings, where all the great Egyptian ruins are. The one that most blew my mind was Karnak Temple. And nothing captures, the hieroglyphics came out, I think, well in this shot. But what's part of the stunning quality of being in Egypt is the sheer size of the ruins is just, it's monumental. So a human being is down here, and the cavern it's cathedral-like, I'll put it that way. Finally, if you're, to make a bridge to the Islamic world, the Muslim world, a really great city to do that is Istanbul, Turkey. Okay, it's like a Paris of a sort, with great food, and it's a famous crossroads of Asia and Europe. So it just has so much culture and so much beauty, and so I recommend that as a way to sort of break into this really very welcoming and very mysterious travel universe. For those of you who like, for those of you who like mystery and adventure, I'll just tell you this, that for me, one of the great moments of traveling for me was when I first heard the call to worship, which goes on, I guess, 4 or 5 times a day in Islam. It's the guys whose job it is to give this call to come to worship to the mosques. I forget how you pronounce their name, so I'm not going to try. But all through the city, you hear this echoing sound. Truly goes right to your core. So I recommend that. This is how this story ended up. One of the stories from the trip, my wife and I, well, thanks to her, she's a CPA and used to work for a big firm, KPMG, which had offices all over the place. And she, how you fill out a little, you're having your performance review, and they ask, well, where would you like to be in 10 years? So Kathy wrote down Paris, and lo and behold, some amazing partner, KPMG, actually came through and offered us offered Kathy a 2-year rotational in the Paris office. We couldn't believe how lucky
Oh,
we were.
yeah.
So having been, Frenchified a bit, lucky us, I ended up writing about how much of France appears in Morocco, which is a former, colony and stuff. Any questions about that stuff?
Ah,
Woo!
this baboon is watching you while you think. All right, so feel free to, yeah. Mhm.
I have a question. So you're saying that you're traveling to all these places and the great food. You're not worried about getting sick? Having,
Sure. Yeah, I'm always worried about it.
well, how do you prevent that?
I don't prevent it. I sometimes get sick. So like people who travel a lot, it's a hazard, right? But again, it can happen to you. I've been, I guess, quite lucky, and not had it ruin large chunks of my trip. Mexico is certain. I love Mexico very much. I've had it bad there, but in the Middle East, I just haven't had a huge issue with it. And I don't think there's an easy cure. I really don't. I do say I have found that some this is just a simplistic kind of over-the-counter preventative thing. Oh, I see Tufts back there where my brother went. An alma mater.
I forgot to
No, it's
check
okay.
background.
It's okay. It's a great school. But so one thing that's worked in terms of diarrhea for me is, I read this somewhere, taking several Pepto tablets every day routinely through your trip, okay? Whether or not you're feeling sick. So you're taking Pepto throughout the day, and that's helped me. So, anyway, I have no super cure.
And then do you speak all these languages? Do you have trouble getting around?
Absolutely, I do not. I speak, because of our time in France, I speak a little bit of French to get by and order bread and stuff. I speak some Spanish from high school and college. I do find, and it saddens me a little bit, that almost everywhere you go, there is some English speaking available and understanding. It saddens me a bit because when I was traveling as a college student backpacking, that was much, much less true back in the 70s. And so then I really had to work hard with little phrase books, and I really felt more distant back then. Now, oh boy, a lot of English everywhere, sadly. Makes it convenient for us. So we're going to take a little visit to Africa here. This is, I've already given him away. He's a baboon. He's not trying to keep himself hidden, but I got an editor at the Washington Post to let me do a piece. I wanted to do a piece looking at Africa at its wettest and its driest, okay, and kind of compare. People write about all sorts of sites and culture. I wanted to write about how water changes where we go and what we see. This, I'd like to say, our friend, this baboon, is drinking from a natural spring. In fact, he's drinking orange Fanta in the parking lot of one of the world's great sites, Victoria Falls. Again, I include it, just like with the polar bears at the dump, to point out how, boy, we humans change everything of the lives of animals. I gotta say, as an aside, people will talk about a monkey's paw, right? Look at that. What are you seeing?
Fingers.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? Someday I'm going to take this on the road to Oklahoma to find some folks who don't believe in evolution, and maybe we'll have a chat.
But their fingers are like the raccoon fingers, right? They're not like opposing fingers, they're like the human fingers.
Well, again, you sound like you're much more knowledgeable than I. These look like thumbs, don't they? Yeah. It almost looks like a thumb.
A baboon, maybe. Yeah.
Again, you're more knowledgeable, so I can't debate it with you. We'd have to, I think, look it up. So again, I'm mostly responding to the knuckles and the nails and all of that. But you make a good point. Maybe they're not. Maybe this is not an opposing thumb. So Africa at its wettest, this was a very beautiful place to be, Zambia, along the Zambezi River. Anyone ever go on safari in Africa? It is, oh boy, right at the top of where I found joy and wonder. But my wife and I really love animals. This is, I mentioned Victoria Falls. This is really one of the world's most famous, if not, well, it's one of its most famous waterfalls. Zimbabwe is on one side, formerly called Rhodesia, and Zambia on the other. It's a fairly dry time of year. I show you this because, it's famous and beautiful. Also, some groups of tourists, not us, were allowed to swim around in the pool above the falls. And I'm like asking our guy, well, how come we're not allowed to do that? I'm writing for the Washington Post. I want the full catastrophe here. He's like, well, we do not think it's safe. I'm like, well, okay, well, how come the other people get to do it? So the safety, this is Africa, okay? And a lot of stuff that we would consider outrageously unsafe, and much of just nobody really makes a big fuss about, okay? It's kind of like when I was a little kid, parents didn't make a big fuss if you fell off your bike or you didn't wear a helmet or whatever. They just said, get up, get over it. But here, so the other tourists' safety mechanism was having locals tread water right between you swimming up at the pool and the actual waterfall. And I'm like, well, are these locals good swimmers? Long silence. No, they are not. So probably good that we didn't get to do it. This is just a look at how that photo, ended up in the inside of the Washington Post, an inside page. Africa from wettest to driest. Definitely, they're probably dry. I know there are drier deserts in Africa than this one, but my editor and I chose a very, very dry animal reserve called Sandbona in South Africa, in part because it's the last place on earth that white lions roam freely. I, being an animal lover, really wanted to try to see a white lion. You can see the scrubbiness here. Here's some more wildlife. This is my wife again with a glass of wine. Again, that hat, I don't know where she got it. I showed this photo in part just to remind people that no matter what kind of oddball destination you're going to, however adventurous it might be, however remote, many good tour companies will make a point to stop and give you a snack and pour you some wine. Okay, so don't think that, well, you're going to be necessarily eating trail mix the whole time. So we didn't know these two other nice ladies on our trip, but I like to ask this question. We're in Africa. One of these two women was wearing something that our guide, who was very shy Zambian, found worrisome, concerning. In fact, he made her take it off. Any guesses?
Zebra,
Very good. Why?
black and white stripes.
Yeah, but why would that? You're absolutely right. Why did that concern the guy?
Being
Because
attacked by
lions
lions.
hunt zebras.
It's in Africa, and what do lions like to eat for lunch?
Zebras.
That's
Zebra.
right. They certainly do. Very good. Sometimes people, I'm glad you guessed the zebra. You're absolutely right. Sometimes people guess this print, and our guide, I asked him about it. He didn't even recognize. This is not an African animal print. This is like I don't know, puma or an ocelot or something, right?
Or art.
So you may know better than I the print who this is. Jaguar, perhaps. Okay, so he's an African guy. He didn't even recognize. It didn't trouble him at all. but the shyness of the guide was just humorous and delightful when he had to ask this lady to take the thing off, and that embarrassed him, which was kind of funny. Night game drives. One of the great wonders of being on safari in Africa is, well, it's much of Africa, it's very hot during the day, very hot. What do animals like to do when it's hot?
Wait,
Sleep.
Sleep. We like to take naps. I like to take a nap. But at night, Africa in the bush comes alive, and you drive around or get driven around in your Jeep with your guide with lights. And in this case, we drove and we drove. And, you know, one of the things about safari is that, are you guaranteed at seeing the animals you've come to see?
No.
No.
No, you are definitely not guaranteed. Some, you believe it or not, there's some safari companies that they spend, you know, half their time dealing with customers who are angry because they didn't get to see all the big five. Okay, I think they must think it's like, you know, I don't know, San Diego Wildlife Park or something like that. So we saw all kinds of great animals in San Bona, but it wasn't until the last night we're like, oh my God, we're going back tomorrow. We haven't seen any white lions. And we drove and we drove and we drove through the night until finally the headlights of the Jeep caught this female. And lucky us, there she was. Notice the amazing reflection in the cat's eyes. Kathy and I, my wife and I, have two shelter cats, Cecil and Maisie, and maybe you've noticed this. Does anyone have a cat?
Yes.
Okay, we love cats. They're our best friends. But so occasionally when you're in a lighted kitchen and your cats, Cecil or Maisie, are in a dark living room or something, you can see this effect of this reflection. There's some. I had a biologist in one of my talks, and he said, oh, he gave me the name for the membrane at the back of the cat's eye that does this trick. But it's pretty amazing. Look at the paws. Look at the relative size of the paws. You know, cats, big and small, are quite similar, are they not, in shape? But the ears here are interestingly rounded compared to a house cat. And to me, anyway, like at least our guys, their paws are pretty powerful, but they don't quite make it to there. All right. Any questions about Africa before we do the next segment? Okay, great. We're going to take a detour, a little weird, odd detour into the world of flight. Okay. One of the big projects I got onto was trying as a travel writer to get to the bottom of, to get behind the scenes of the world of flying around in commercial jets that we all do. Okay. We all do it. Some of us don't think anything of it. It becomes normal. I always, even though I grew up in a family that I had to fly quite a bit as a kid, I've always kind of thought, gee, this whole thing is really strange, that these giant metal objects, stuffed with, baggage, people, etc., get to, zip off the ground like nothing. So I really wanted to try to get behind the scenes and write about what it's really like to be in the cockpit of a plane and stuff like that. This is a young me. So it took me, this is not too long after 9/11, and all the restrictions were in place about trying to get behind the scenes of anything in terms of commercial flight, right? We all remember that time. And this is when cockpits were closed and security redoubled, all of that. For me to do this piece for the Boston Globe, I had to find, and it was hard, I had to find an airline willing to help me with it. okay, and let me try to see what went on, that the average passenger didn't get to see. Nobody said yes. Everyone was afraid. Finally, one company, Frontier Airlines in Denver, said, you know what? We cannot, by FAA rules, let you fly in a cockpit of a normal flight, but we can let you travel with a bunch of pilots and flight attendants over to Germany, where our new Airbus planes are manufactured, and fly back on a brand new Airbus, so you can, fly in the cockpit. So I did that, and that was really interesting. This is just a moment where I'm getting to get up close and up close and personal with the new plane I'm going to fly back on at the Airbus manufacturing plant in Finkenwerder, Germany, where, by the way, I got lost. I didn't mean to get lost. And so it was a terrible moment of everyone thinking the travel writer is engaged in industrial sabotage or espionage or something. I literally just got separated from the group and got lost. Help. Anyway, this is the cockpit as we are. Notice how, because we're flying, this is a Frontier pilot, and there's a co-pilot up here. I'm in the jump seat behind the pilot, because we're all flying back in a brand new plane. There are no passengers but us. You notice nobody's in uniform. I got to add one fun aspect was all the seats in the main cabin of the plane were covered with, when you get a new car, everything's covered with that plastic bubble wrap stuff, right? So all the seats were covered with that. There was an inflated raft taking up row 12, etc. But the real interest for my story came in me learning about takeoff, landing, and flight up in the cockpit. So I'll share a few. Oh, I should add that I did get to, for this piece, I got to train on a simulator that the Frontier pilots used for their training. Simulators are amazing, and they're just like flying in a cockpit, except it's simulated. They have hydraulics, so you feel like you're in a plane. The sounds are accurate. So a pilot like this guy trained me so I would learn how they learn. And one of the things I really was curious about was how planes take off in really horrible weather. So again, this is the real cockpit. I'll tell you about that in a second. But in my simulator, I said, give me the worst weather you can come up with. So he did. He gave me thunderstorms plus blizzard. I said, give me the worst airport to take off in, which he chose. He chose LaGuardia because of reasons that I couldn't remember. But anyway, the simulated Airbus plane that I quote unquote flew took off just fine in all of that. And once I got up over simulated Manhattan, the guy said, well, I didn't tell you something else I did. And I said, well, what else did you do? He had cut out one of the two engines during my simulated takeoff. And I didn't even feel, it wasn't even possible to feel any change. So here in the real cockpit of this new Airbus A320 flying to the US from Germany, a couple of things I learned. One was that before anyone in the jump seat who's not a pilot gets to fly up there, you're given a couple of warnings. One is, should there be any kind of accident, should the pilot and co-pilot become, this is how they said it, stiff and motionless. This stiff, in other words, if we had an accident and neither one of these guys were conscious, okay, to tell me what to do, what I was supposed to do was, he showed me a rope and he showed me a pickaxe that's coiled in the corner of the cockpit, and instructed me I would have to chop a hole in the in the windscreen and lower myself, rappel down. Cockpits are quite high off the ground, so how about that for fun? Luckily, that didn't happen.
Ugh.
Another part of my trip, one of my research for this, I got to fly for this article in a private jet. I don't know if you've tried this. Kind of an interesting experience. They ask your weight. That kind of surprised me. This is me showing off the legroom in my private jet. It's not my jet. I just got to do it for this article. I was a little annoyed. They didn't demand that I put my seatbelt on. Hey, how come we normal commercial flyers have to do it? Why don't they have to do it in a private jet? Lots of good snacks though. High-end scotch and all of that. So that was intriguing. And a little personal digression here. This is my late dad, Paul Mandel, who probably the guy I got my travel bug from. Dad he died as a young guy in his 30s, sadly, but he was a writer and then an editor for the Old Life magazine back in the 60s, and had a great beat. His beat was, he wrote the piece when John Glenn was, the first American to orbit the Earth. He wrote stories that accompanied the Mercury space shots. And this is Dad trying out life. Did a piece thanks to NASA where this is an early prototype of the Apollo, very early prototype of the Apollo capsule, the moon landing NASA series. So Dad got to be the guy to sort of try out what it would feel like. This is again my dad learning about Houston Space Center. This is early NASA, so we're in the early 1960s, still in the Mercury program, getting behind the scenes. So I include that just because I like to bring him back to mind, and because I think his influence is big, even though I didn't know him for very long. So any questions on the flight thing? I know we're moving fast. I know we're zipping around the globe. We haven't, one place I'd love to go, never will make it, I'm sure, is space. But would love to write about that adventure destination. Anyway, back to Africa. This is a country I did a story for the Washington Post. It's a country that's a little unusual for safari visitors. It is Uganda. Look at these kids. Everyone's super nice in Kenya and Uganda and Botswana, by the way. If you're interested in Africa, there's some very nice culture and a lot of English speaking because of the British, background there. Love these school uniforms. But the reason I went to Uganda, which has some very unpleasant political problems, the reason I went there is because my editor and I wanted to try to get to a safari destination where there weren't a million fences and a million guides with guns to keep you separate from the animals. The idea here, Uganda is newer in the safari world. And so like Churchill, Manitoba, the locals live cheek by jowl with hippos and rhinos and lions. So you get to be up close with them too. First stop, rhino sanctuary. Gotta love this sign. It's a rhino sanctuary, beware. Me and the other writers and photographer thought, well, gee, for sure, there, be somebody with a gun walking around. We're in a field with a bunch of rhinos. Could rhinos cause you any pain? I should think so, yes. Read some Hemingway if you doubt that. I still remember our guide. He weighed about 112 pounds. He was about 4'9", and his name was Opio Raymond. And we at one point we saw one of the rhinos pawing the ground a little near us. No, he had no gun or anything. And somebody asked, well, what if one of these rhinos charges us? And Opio Raymond, the guide, thought about it for a minute. And then he thought and thought, and then he said, you should climb a tree. And you've never seen a group of people sidle more casually towards a tree trunk than this. This is at the lodge, one of the lodges I stayed at. Caution wild animals. One of the most exciting things about staying in Para Lodge is the sight and sound of wild animals all around you. However, please remember, all these animals really are wild. It would be most unwise to approach them closely, feed or tease them. Gotta love it. Gotta love it. So I ended up asking at the desk, so hey, do you mind if I asked, did you have some kind of incident? Sure enough, an Australian tourist had too many Foster's lagers and tried to ride a hippo. Okay, ride a hippo. Now, what do we know? These are hippos. This is the Nile as it flows through Uganda. We've all seen the greeting card with the hippo yawning with its big, broken molar teeth, right? What do we know about hippos? Anything?
Very strong.
They're supposed to be the most dangerous of all animals.
Very good. Okay. They're big, they're strong, and they kill more humans in Africa by far than any other mammal, okay? Except for fellow humans, okay? So I remember asking the first guide I had in Africa, well, okay, that's interesting. What could a hippo do to me? My guide was Swiss. He just whipped around at me, and he said, angrily, he said, he will bite you in half. And that kind of made that point. FYI, we were told, if you see hippos wallowing around, do not approach the river more than, say, 10 yards or out away from it, because they consider that their turf. This is taken from a boat on the Nile. This guy looks kind of tough, doesn't he?
Mm.
This is just not having to do with the hippos, but just a moment where I was able to get two species, in a peaceful way, in a photo. This kind of makes me think of, gee, what if, someday there was a peaceable kingdom that might look like this. But back to hiking around in Uganda, looking at the animals. This is, for some reason, the Ugandan government sent a bunch of soldiers with us. Who knows what they were worried about? We're a bunch of travel journalists, but this soldier is looking at a picture of himself for the first time. He'd never seen that.
Can I just ask you about the African Americans? The gentleman in this picture and then the children, they don't seem to have hair. Do they shave their heads?
Sometimes, yeah, very often. It's a style, so
Okay.
definitely in many cases I saw that. It's hot there, it's very hot. So it's not a bad thing to do, is it? These elephants look like they're sharing a confidence, don't they? As we all know, elephants, very social, very intelligent beings. This is not a white lion. This is a tawny lion, a male in neighboring Kenya. Male lions are much harder to find in Africa. Those of you who've been on safari will know that. Anyone want to guess why that is?
To get in fights.
Females outnumber them.
That's probably true, and maybe they outnumber us guys, I think, in human life a bit. But males, just like in human existence, the guys are lazy, okay? Males spend a lot of their time sleeping over here, okay? And guess what do the women do? Everything, okay? Female lions bring up the cubs, they go hunting, they bring the meat back, they often hunt in packs, okay? I don't use a telephoto. This male was about literally 7, 8 feet from our safari vehicle, never once gazed at us, never once met our gaze. In fact, he was so excited by the presence of humans that this was his reaction. Time for another nap, probably. There are still some Maasai tribes people living traditionally in Kenya, well worth seeing. And this guy spoke English, delightful, funny, interesting. His wife, look at the clothing, beautiful, and wife and son, very cool. My wife became fascinated with these guys. Now, as a quick aside, if you're into paintings at all, famous paintings, I don't have time to play my usual guessing game, but I usually ask, I'll ask you, does this remind you of any famous New England painting in an odd way?
Was that the painting by Andrew Wyeth?
Very good. Bravo.
Yeah.
Oh, I rarely get this answered. Okay.
Christina's
World. If you look it up,
Oh, yeah.
bravo. Hats off. So it's a very famous painting that has a girl in a print dress lying on a hillside with an old Maine house up at the top of the hill. And so if you look it up, you'll see there's an odd kind of similarity to the body language. This is kind of Mandel's cheetah version. Oh darn, I lost the backing. Anyway, this is the front view of our cheetah friends. We all know them as the world's fastest land animals. Any guesses? Notice they have this interesting little mascara under their eyes. Any guesses as to what that's for? I certainly didn't guess it. Cheetah are daytime hunters, okay? And most cats, as you may know from your own cats, like to hunt and fight and roam around at night. Ever notice how baseball and football players have blacking sometimes under their eyes? Ever notice that? This is nature's way of providing cheetah with anti-glare. Isn't that cool? Giraffe, you'll see a lot in Africa. This is a forest fire in the distance. Giraffe are curious, shy, beautiful. And this is out of order. This is nothing to do with Africa. It's about a piece I did for the Washington Post on Bangkok, where you can have this is my wife. She had a traditional Chinese silk dress made in 30 hours. And my buddy Kevin had a tuxedo that he doesn't need made. So I kind of wrote up the adventures of doing that. But before we do our last, I've got to whiz through this segment because we're running out of time. This is an island very close to the coast of the US. I can't play the guessing game. It is Cuba. We can all go. All we have to do is sign up for an educational, any kind of tour nowadays that anyone can sign up, and they're all focused on either like music and art or education or architecture. These two women are selling not cigars and not flowers. They are charging people to take their picture. Okay. When I'm being a journalist, I thought, I'm not going to pay these ladies. I'm going to take this cool looking shot right here. Except I sort of didn't count on one thing, and that was this guy. You know what his job was? You know what his job was? Bouncer. I don't think I've ever had a more sweaty, hot run through 90-degree temperatures. Cuba is a photographer's paradise, color everywhere. Of course, the cars, the American cars, typical apartment block, so much beauty, sad, and I hope someday we'll all be buddies again, and they'll be able to get back into the international community. Cubans love Americans, by the way, very happy, interested to talk to you. These Girl Scouts literally stopped our bus this tourist just got a shot with them. Quickly on to, oh my goodness, we're jetting around the world. This is Japan, yes. I have to include it even though we're running out of time because it's really a magical destination. I got to, for the Washington Post, hike an ancient pathway from Kyoto all the way to Tokyo, which took almost a week. These are the traditional sandals and hat and cap that would have used to have been used on this. It's called the Nakasendo Way. And here are we hikers. Ever hike through a bamboo forest? The wind makes the trees click, click, click against each other. You pass amazing Shinto temples. This is not blood. This is an honorific, decorative thing that locals do for their local deities. We hikers looking out at Fuji and other famous mountains. Two little Japanese girls. I always include this, even though it makes the talk long, because Japan, yes, Japan can be difficult and scary for some people, but it's a lesson and it's a fascinating dip into a culture that's opposite of ours in so many ways. We're so used to assertiveness in the US, so used to grabbing and being assertive and aggressive and getting what we want. Japanese, it's a startling moment when you find that people are bowing to you constantly and that many people, especially women, will not leave a room with their backs turned towards you. They will back out of the room, bowing to you, bowing. People wearing white gloves, cab drivers and things. So just it's part of what makes travel amazing. Last series, the bottom of the world, where tourists could not go until the late 1960s. I was lucky to do a story for the Globe on taking a ship from Argentina, the southernmost tip of Argentina, to Antarctica. I was telling you about Zodiac boats, which bring passengers ashore. We got to hike around, of course, all over Antarctica. These guys you're seeing here, sorry, my phone is ringing. This is a local elephant seal. Very peaceful. It's going to Antarctica is a bit like going to the Galapagos because the animals have evolved without humans around them, so they're not afraid of you. This is our ship, the Endeavor. Our captain was kind enough to sail the ship as far as it would go, literally into the ice of a frozen Antarctic bay, so we could have the great experience of walking around the outside of our ship. Very rare, great experience. You can see us disembarking. We played ice soccer and stuff around, and so that was a cool experience. Here's one of the local residents. It's a king penguin, and gotta love this sort of footprints here. You know, it's hard to even convey. I thought I might see 50, 100 penguins. You land in bays in Antarctica where there are cities of 10, 20, 30,000 penguins. Do penguins smell good?
No.
You said that with true authority.
Yep.
Do you know some penguins? It doesn't matter if you know them or not, they don't smell good. But I will say this, that mommy penguins, women are doing most of the work. Daddy penguins often sit on the eggs while mommy goes hunting, okay? And waddling around in our parkas. A lot of the fluffy baby penguins thought we were mommy, we tourists were mommy coming home. after hunting, and each baby penguin has its own special whistle, no kidding, that mommy's supposed to recognize. So we had literally hundreds of little penguins coming up to us whistle. Finally, a few oddball stories I done over the years. Anyone ever ride on Greyhound bus long distance? I did a piece for the Washington Post from going from DC to LA, 5 days of some torture. This is a story with some humor that I did hiking a strip mall. Strip malls, believe it or not, have their own weird landscaping. The land designed for cars, I thought I would explore for the heck of it on foot. And last of all, and I'll open it to questions, I was I was a theme park character for a day. This is me in the suit of Patrick the Starfish. This is SpongeBob, but for there's a series in the Washington Post called The Insider, getting behind the scenes of travel. So my goal here was to train to be a theme park character and experience the whole day. Oh my God. It's hard to begin to describe it, but I'll tell you this: as a character in a suit, you have to actually see out the eyes of these guys, and the eyes are fogged in part because I brought a little mini thermometer in there. It was 108 degrees in my suit. Yep. Yep. And at one point, Patrick's big. Okay, Patrick the Starfish. I'm a novice here. I'd only had 1 day of training. I got wedged into the door of some attraction. And so all of a sudden, you may not know this, but there are a whole bunch of handlers floating around theme parks near the Mickey Mouse characters and stuff in case of any emergencies. And so the handlers all showed up out of nowhere and literally rammed me out of the door or the doorway. So guys, I can't tell you how much fun all of your questions and stuff have been, and comments, but I'm opening up the floor. Other things that you want to know or want to comment about?
Peter?
Yeah.
I have a quick thought.
Sure.
While referencing your father's life article on Apollo, why not approach Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Sir Richard Branson with your desire to write about a trip to space? You may get
Great
a free
idea.
ride. It's worth a try, and you definitely have the background to approach them. So thank you again.
That's a really nice thought, and great idea, by the way. I'll take you with me. Want to go?
No, thanks. I like the visuals, but I'm a chicken.
I love it. Thank you again. Who else?
You're welcome.
Anyone else have questions?
Peter, I have a question. Can you
Sure.
hear me? A little while ago, you just showed us a picture of elephant seal in Antarctica, but it was on grass. Is there grass in Antarctica?
Oh, definitely. Yep. So by the water, there's a lot of it is you're traveling to Antarctica in Antarctic summer, okay, which is January, okay, in the northern hemisphere. So
Okay.
most of it is snow covered. There are bare rocky patches by the water in many of the bays. There are patches of grass. It's a good question. Plus, I should add that I don't know what happened to my photo of me doing this, but there are some thermally heated bays in Antarctica. People don't always believe this, but several of us went swimming. I'm not inventing this. We went swimming in a thermally heated bay, which the water itself wasn't the problem. Getting out of the water and being ferried back to the ship in the Zodiac boat, the water all over my skin froze in a very interesting thin layer. I gotta find that shot, but a good question. Great question. Others?
I think the seals like to sunbathe.
Yeah, they do. They do.
Yes, yeah, that's why they're on the grass. They're sunbathing.
They do. And those guys are really peaceful. There's another kind of seal down there called a wolf seal. Oh, man. Those guys were not friendly. And in fact, it was mating season for wolf seals. And not that they wanted to mate with us, thank God, but they were really on the war path. And their fangs and mouths were really looked like an angry rabid dog. So you really had to be careful. Anyone else? Well, I just want to say thanks again. And if you liked it, please tell others. And if you didn't like it, feel free to shoot me an email and let me know what I can improve. It was a lot of fun for me. And again, I got to thank all the libraries and the many attendees for coming. Thank you.
It was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hands up.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thanks. Thanks, Megan.
Thank you, Peter. And as a reminder to the attendees, a copy of this recording will be emailed to all of you.
Okay.